Welcome to today's episode of Exploring Faith. I'm Lucian, and I'm joined by my co-host, Luca. In this episode, we're going to share our personal journeys with Buddhism and Islam. Two spiritual paths, though different, share a deep connection to peace, mindfulness, and the pursuit of understanding.
That's right. I'll be sharing with my experiences with Buddhism and how it shaped my perspective on life, while Lucian will talk about his experiences with Islam. We've both found ways to draw wisdom from our respective traditions, and we thought that it would be interesting to explore the similarities and the differences between the two. So let's dive in. I think the best place to start with is how we first encountered these paths. I know for me, my journey into Buddhism started pretty unexpectedly. I was in my late teens, struggling with a lot of inner turmoil and just feeling lost, when I stumbled upon a book on mindfulness, and it was like a light bulb went off. Suddenly there was a way to approach suffering, not by avoiding it, but by embracing it with compassion and awareness. That concept of mindfulness really resonated with me.
That's beautiful, Luca. I can definitely relate to the idea of finding peace through mindfulness. For me, Islam came into my life through a very different route. I was raised in a secular family, and so I didn't grow up with much religious exposure until all the way in college. A close friend of mine, who was Muslim, invited me to a prayer gathering. At first, I didn't fully understand what was happening, but there was this palpable sense of community, discipline, and a deep connection to God. That feeling was something that I hadn't felt before, and it sparked a curiosity within me to learn more.
It's interesting how our paths started so differently, but I think that sense of inner peace and connection is something that both Buddhism and Islam can provide. In Buddhism, there's this concept of dukkha, or suffering, and the Four Noble Truths, which teach us that suffering is an inherent part of life, but it's through understanding and practice that we can transcend it. For me, meditation became this tool to really face suffering head on without running away from it.
That's so true, Luca. In Islam, suffering is also acknowledged, but there's this beautiful emphasis on surrendering to Allah's will and trusting that everything has a greater purpose. The practice of prayer, salat, is a way to reconnect with a higher purpose. Even in times of hardship, there's this belief that every trial is an opportunity for spiritual growth and that God's mercy is always present. For me, the routines of daily prayer created a rhythm and brought a sense of structure and peace to my religious life, especially when I was struggling emotionally.
Wow, I love that. Both traditions emphasize the importance of being present, whether it's through meditation or prayer. I also think there's a common thread of compassion in both Buddhism and Islam. In Buddhism, there's the practice of metta, loving kindness meditation. It's a practice where you silently repeat phrases wishing well-being for yourself as well as others. In Islam, the idea of charity and kindness is central too, like in the practice of zakat, where you give to those in need as an expression of gratitude for what you've been given.
That is beautiful, Luca. And I love how you mentioned metta. It is very similar to the other practice you mentioned, zakat. And it's all about community and kindness. And in Islam, the idea of charity isn't just about giving money. It's about kindness in all forms. The Prophet Muhammad said that smiling in your brother's face is an act of charity, which reminds us all that small acts of kindness, like just showing compassion, listening, or being present for someone, are all expressions of faith. And I think Buddhism shares the same emphasis on compassion, not just for others, but also for ourselves. The practice of self-compassion is huge in Buddhism, especially in terms of acknowledging our flaws without judgment.
Very well said. It's interesting that you mentioned self-compassion. Buddhism teaches that in order to be truly compassionate towards others, we we first need to cultivate compassion for ourselves. I think a lot of people get caught up in the idea of self-criticism or guilt, but in Buddhism, there's a recognition that those feelings don't help us grow. We learn to acknowledge them, but not let them define us. It's very much about acceptance.
Oh, yeah. It is the same in Islam. There's this understanding that no one is perfect and everyone should be striving to be better. But God's mercy is greater than any of our shortcomings. The concept of tawaba, repentance, reminds us that if we make mistakes, we can always return to God with sincerity and that there's room for growth and forgiveness. That's such an empowering message, especially when you're trying to build a relationship with God and further your understanding of yourself.
Oh man, absolutely. And I think both traditions, at their core, are about understanding our own humanity, our limitations, our potential for growth, and our connection to something greater than ourselves. It's not about perfection, but instead about progress.
Well said, Luca. It's all about the journey, not the destination. And at the end of the day, I think righteousness was really the friends we made along the way. And as we explore our own path, the more that we realize that even though Buddhism and Islam are fundamentally different, they both point to the same universal truths of peace, compassion, and the importance of being present in the moment.
Wow, man, exactly. And that's what makes these spiritual traditions so incredibly powerful. They offer us tools for navigating the ups and downs of life with the understanding that the journey is never ever linear. It's about embracing each moment as it comes.
Never, ever linear. I love how you mentioned that. And I think that that's especially powerful. And I think that that is a great place for us to wrap up today. We've really only scratched the surface of our experiences with Buddhism and Islam, respectively. But I hope this conversation sparks curiosity for others to explore these paths and find their own way to peace.
Well, I definitely couldn't agree anymore. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today on our podcast, Exploring Faith. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, leave a review, and like. We'll be back soon with more conversations about spirituality as well as self-discovery.
Until next time, take care and be kind to yourselves. And as we always say at the end of all our episodes, take it away, Luca.
Namo Buddhaya.
And Assalamu Alaikum, brothers. Have a nice night.